How long will you live for? That is the subject of today. It's morbid, I know, but it highlights the importance of proper goal setting and planning. There's two differences. There's a difference between when you want to retire and then your lifespan as well. You know, we're all getting healthier and healthier. Technology's changing, we're living for longer, all of that sort of stuff, more health conscious. So the time between when you retire to when you actually die is getting much longer. So your lifespan after retirement is much longer. So for example, you may be 50 and want to retire at 60, but actually you'll have another 30 years of life to live for. So you've got to factor that into the context of your planning when it comes to property, because you may think, oh God, you know, I've only got 10 years or 5 years to build a portfolio, but that's not true. You've got 5 years or 10 years to start your portfolio, but you've actually got 40 years or 35 years to reap the benefits of that portfolio. So it's never really too late to start. And if you're 30 or 40 and you haven't started and you're going to live to 90 or 100 in my case, then you've got 70 or 60 years of growth in that portfolio, which is massive. So to paint the picture, I've come up with a couple of different scenarios, and then we're going to sort of tie that back into property and thinking about it through the lens of property, and then you can hopefully have a think about it through your own lens and situation and see how you can apply it to yourself. So two scenarios. First one is, would you rather have income for life or not? This is the exact scenario. It's £10,000 a month in income for 10 years or £2,500 a month in income for life. Now, a lot of things to consider there. I know we'll get onto that a bit more, but it's just trying to help you understand how your goals and your situation are, in my opinion, the biggest thing to consider in property. You know, again, if you are a little bit older or you haven't got long to live for whatever reason, then the £10,000 a month would be the way, right? But if you're younger, then maybe it's the £2,500. But then you've got to factor in opportunity cost and inflation, all of this sort of stuff, but we'll talk about that. Okay, what about this? Scenario two, it's £10,000 going 5x in the next 6 months. So that would give you £60,000, good maths, £60,000 at the end of 6 months, or £10,000 compounding at 6% per annum for life. Now, obviously, initially you think, well, I do, let's go with the £10,000 doing 5x because it's going to be heaps of cash straight away. But when you look at the figures on the £10,000 compounding at 6%, it can add up to be a lot, especially when you factor in your lifespan, not just your retirement. Now, both of these scenarios have something in common and something not in common. You know, there's one approach which is very slow and sustained and will reap the benefits of time in the market. And then there's another approach which is a bit more fast and will allow you to get a lot more money a lot sooner. Whilst these questions are thought-provoking, obviously they're not real situations. Well, actually, you could make them real. £2,500 or £10,000 a life, you could make that with property, or if you won one of those lottery tickets, millionaire for life or whatever it is. But the whole point is that it's thought-provoking and it's supposed to get you thinking about your situation, because what is the best for you? You need to sit down and figure it out, you know. So for me, it's obvious. I'd take the £2,500 for life. Why is that? Because I fully intend on living another 50 years if I can, 60 years if I can, or even more. As I said at the start, modern science and all of that sort of stuff, people are living a lot longer. And I think, as Peter Attia says, your health span will be much longer as well, not just your lifespan. So we'll be fit and healthy for a long time. And what's the point in investing now and giving yourself a green light and building up all that wealth and money if you're not going to be in a state to enjoy it, because you can't take it with you. Everyone knows that. So if I'm looking at my own situation, the £2,500 in income for life, if say over 50 years, would give me a pot of £1.5 million. By comparison, the other option, 10,000 for 10 years, I think I said it was, that would give me 1.2 million. So there's a £300,000 difference there. And if I live for another 60 years, ambitious, I know that's £600,000 more. And so then you think about this yourself. Say you think you've got, talking a lot about when we're going to die, so sorry about that, but if you think you've got another 30 years left, then maybe you say, okay, I'll take the £10,000 for 10 years and I'll invest it straight away. I'll invest it each time I've got 100,000, and you build it up that way. And so your answer could be the same or different. You know, how long do you think you've got to live? What's the opportunity cost of not investing that now? You know, maybe you say, I'll take all the money, I'll put it into crypto, I'll do 100x or whatever it is. And then it also comes down to your personality and what you would prefer. You know, are you the sort of person that would prefer the security of having £2,500 for life? Does the life you want to live mean that you could live comfortably on that? Where are you going to retire? You know, if you want to live in London when you're retired, then that's probably not the best way. You've probably got to take the £10,000 a month and then invest that elsewhere to make it much bigger. And there is no perfect answer. It all depends on you. And it's the same if you were to look at investing in a stocks and shares portfolio. You know, how do you split between ETFs and bonds, for example? You know, are you 70-30 to ETFs, which is a bit more aggressive, or are you 50-50? And again, all of these things depend on your situation, when you'd like to retire, your appetite for risk. There's lots of different variables in it. So hopefully I'm painting the picture that, you know, the planning and the goal setting and your situation bit is the most important part when it comes to property, because there are so many variables. And, you know, we get asked the question, what should I do? Where's the best place to buy? What should I buy? Well, there is no one size fits all. It totally depends on you. For some people, a high yielding HMO might be the way to go. For others, a refurb. For others, again, it might just be a standard buy to let for the long term. It all depends. Okay, now let's look at option 2. So it's the £10,000 doing 5x in 6 months. So that gives you £50,000 in your pocket in 6 months from now, or the £10,000 compounding at 6% per annum for life. Let's have a look at them. The first option obviously gives you that income in your pocket. In 6 months, you could take the £50,000, you could buy a property, you could put it in the stocks and shares, compounding at 6% for life. If you're already retired, you can go and buy yourself a boat, whatever you want to do. If we look at the other option, £10,000 compounding at 6% for life, this is what the figures look like. In 20 years' time, it'll be £32,000. In 30 years' time, £57,000. And this, you've got to remember, is without adding anything into it. So in a real life situation, and I appreciate these aren't real life, you would probably be adding into the pot, so this would amplify. In 40 years' time, it's 103,000. In 50 years' time, it's 184,000. And in 60 years' time, it's 330,000. That, I think, goes to show the power of time in the market. And that can be, yes, this is stocks and shares market, but that can be any market. Generally speaking, time in the market compounds and rewards you. So, you know, the sooner you start, the better. And in this example, after 20 years, the 10,000 going 5x would still be the best choice. And it's only when you get up to 30 years that the compounding starts paying dividends. And I know some of you will be thinking, well, take the 50,000, put that compounding. Very valid point. But again, it all depends on you and your appetite for risk, your knowledge of the market, your resources, your ability to go and do this stuff. And you can see that across the board. You know, you look at individual company stocks, Meta, Google, Tesla, Berkshire Hathaway, for example, what have they done over the 50 years or however many years they've been in business? So it's all time in the market. And it's the same with property. From 50 years ago, from land registry data, I'm pretty sure the average house price in the UK was 4,000 odd quid, 4,265 to be exact. The average UK house price now is 282,000, you know, so from 4,000 to 282, and that's in 50 years. So it goes back again to your life horizon as opposed to just your retirement horizon. Yes, you may be 40 now and you want to retire at 50, you know, insert your numbers, whatever they are. But if you're 40, you're going to live to 90. That is, if my maths is correct, 50 years, you know, and previous 50 years, we've gone from 4,000 to 280,000, which is a 6,900% increase in price. I mean, if you were to do that now, 280,000 times 6,900, you would get an average property price of £19 million, which just seems crazy saying it. And then if we look at another scenario, you know, if you want to take it a step further, you could take the 50 from the 5x in 6 months, and then you could stick that compounding at 6%. And what would the figures look like there? That would give you 287,000 in 20 years. And the whole point of this exercise is to show you that there is no one size fits all. It's all about your goals and what suits you. You know, do you take action now, or do you wait? Do you take the longer term approach, or do you take the shorter term approach, which is often a bit riskier, not in these hypothetical situations because they're hypothetical situations, but often the longer your time frame, the more you can ride out peaks and troughs. So consider your goals, and if you do that thoroughly, which is often the hardest part, and you take a couple of hours to write down, okay, what am I trying to achieve? What sort of income would I like? By when? Where would I like to live? Will that be enough income to get there? And then you overlay that with your resources to do that, i.e. what cash have you got? What time have you got to apply to it? What knowledge do you have to be able to do that successfully? If you spend some time doing that, then you'll actually start seeing a bit of a roadmap map out in front of you as to what is the best way to build my portfolio. Have I got a long time horizon and therefore I'm going for purely capital appreciation? Is it shorter, therefore do I need yield? And when you map that out, the answers as to where and what you should buy become a lot clearer. Summary is there's no one size fits all. It all depends on you in most walks of life, certainly in property. So do your goals and figure out what you're trying to achieve.